Live.
Yo, what's good, Knicks Nation? Alex Trataros here, aka the Tratacaster, back again with another Game of the Week preview. This time we're previewing Game 6. The Knicks make their way back down to South Beach to take on the Miami Heat, pushing it to a Game 6. Come on, guys. We got to get hyped. We got to get ready. So you know what that means. We got to do this internally. We got to get Knicks Nation here ready and correct. So we got with us today KFTV's very own Jeffrey Campbell. He's our draft expert, but he's been tuned in, obviously, like we've been. But before we ask Jeff how he's doing, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. And make sure to check out KnicksFanTV.com. What's good, Jeff? How you feeling today, man?
All is good, man. Listen, can I say the vibes are immaculate? I can't say the vibes are immaculate, but they're solid right now. We staved off the elimination. We live to fight another day. That's the name of the story here. Just to have an opportunity to play Game 6 in the Miami, keep this magical Knicks season going is all that we can ask for. So I'm doing very well, Alex. How about yourself?
I'm doing well too, man. Look, Knicks won yesterday, 112-103 against the Miami Heat, right? And that's what we needed in order to push this game out. You didn't want to see this team come in lifeless and not just, show no sense of urgency. Like there was very little of that in Game 4, right? So it was good to see them bounce back in that way. You get a little bit of momentum right now. Let's see if they can carry that back, like I said, to South Beach. Okay. So for everyone who doesn't know, all right, you can catch this coverage on ESPN tomorrow, Friday at 7:30 p.m. at the Kaseya Center. How many name changes does the Miami Heat have to make for this arena? But hey, that's what it is. But Jeff, let's start off here. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get right into the conversation. What has your thoughts been? What was your thoughts of the Knicks win yesterday in Game 5?
I would say that it was very much kind of an epitome of the Knicks season, a bit of a roller coaster, right? If you think about how this season has gone, we start off kind of underwhelming in terms of the expectations for this team. The coach is on the hot seat. James Dolan is saying, hey, you have the green light if you want to make a coaching change. And all of a sudden, Tibbs changes the rotation and we shoot off like a rocket. All of a sudden our offensive rating is crazy. We have young guys contributing at very high levels. And we're looking like a really solid and competitive basketball team. So it kind of looked like a lot of what this game looked like as well. The first quarter was trash. I think from an effort standpoint, we didn't do what we needed to do to be competitive. And all of a sudden, that second unit comes in the second quarter, and we show life. Obi gives us pace. Jalen Brunson obviously plays 48 minutes in a Herculean effort to really lift us to victory. And you saw the tweets, right? Alex, you were on Twitter just like I was. Everyone was like, listen, this is it after the first quarter. I guess we don't have it. And it was very clear that this Knicks team did not say die, was not going to let us down, especially on the Garden floor. No one wanted to see the Heat celebrating on our home court. And they really put together a very heartfelt effort, a lot of pride on the line, and they showed it. So that's my biggest takeaway, is that even though the Heat have been the better team this series, I think even the most ardent Knicks supporter would have to admit that. We said that no Emmanuel Quickly, he's a big part of our rotation. We didn't have him. And even with Julius really struggling early on, this team really gutted it out. And that's been our motto this entire season. And we gutted out a victory last night in the most important way possible.
Absolutely, Jeff. And I agree with everything you said, especially the description of the game, right? It started off slow like the season, then it started to pick up. And that's also kind of just been the way we've seen the Knicks play throughout the regular season, right? It's either they come out strong or they have like a lackadaisical first quarter, and then they start to, like a jalopy, right? Start to get it going. Once they start moving, once you start seeing the wheels turn, that engine starts roaring and everything's okay. But as you said, it was a gutsy win, a very determined team effort. I like what I saw from them. I think the big thing for me, though, for watching that team and what changed is that this team was playing a lot of half court, right? The transition hasn't been there for most of the series. You needed some sort of spark. Second quarter, second unit comes in, and Jalen Brunson with them, and you just start seeing like the flow of the offense, right? You start seeing everyone run up and down the court, trying to get in transition, get into their sets early. Something we haven't really seen throughout this entire series, as I said. And with that, it seemed like it jolted what needed to happen. And then once even when Julius came back in, subbed out Obi, we started to see that same momentum continue, even into the third quarter, right? You see Randall getting the ball, making the quick decision. All right, I'm going to go downhill, pass out of the double team, and you find whether it's Grimes or RJ on the perimeter for a 3-point shot. And that was the trickle effect that we needed to get back into rhythm. Is there anything that you saw from an offensive standpoint or defensive standpoint, just from a strategy, I guess, overall, that happened in yesterday's game that we haven't either seen or that was refreshing for you?
I would say the biggest thing is, I mean, you would have to mention it's somewhat of an obvious take, but it's something that you brought up earlier. You talked about staggering Brunson or Randall more with the second unit, and it wasn't just a stagger. I mean, Brunson played 48 minutes. He had a short 30-second, timeout where Deuce came in briefly, call it a cup of coffee or whatever. But Tibbs was very clear on the sense that if I'm going out with my horses, I'm going out with my strong guys, with the guys that I believe in, the guys that got me here. And that was the biggest adjustment that we could see. I was trying to watch the Heat's defense mostly because the one thing that worried me a lot was as a Knicks team, we were rotating so much because we were either playing drop coverage with Mitch and we weren't switching a lot. And this caused a lot of rotation. And the Heat were killing us on that because their passes were very crisp, very quick. They're finding the open man, and we're scrambling all over the place. So I can't say that I saw like a big change, but I did see them with perimeter guys do a lot more switching. So if Grimes and Hart were out there or Grimes and Barrett were out there, they were switching more. But the Heat are still pulling a lot of 1-5 pick and roll. So they're trying to bring Bam up and they're trying to put Mitch on an island. If you're going to switch, you're going to have him guarding somebody on the perimeter, which is going to be very difficult for him. But the Knicks, and if I have to be honest too, like I think we have to call a spade a spade. The Heat missed a lot of open shots last night. That's just a fact. Now, if you're looking on the other side of that, they weren't a very good three-point shooting team during the regular season. So there's a large sample size of Heat basketball that says, even if they have three-point shots, they're not going to make them at a very high clip. If you're a Knicks fan, you're hoping that they're, kind of regressing towards the mean in that sense. So if that is true, that's great for us. But hopefully that can still remain the same. But I don't think defensively there was a lot different. I think we were, if anything that I can say was different from the previous game to last night's game, we were just a step quicker to loose balls. We were much better at finding that 50-50 ball, that 50-50 offensive rebound, that defensive rebound. We were much quicker in that step, and I think it paid big dividends for us.
Absolutely. You saw the hustle that we didn't get to see in game 4, and that was the big change for the Knicks in this game. I mean, how fitting is it to have Julius Randle on a hustle play to seal the game at the end? When he was getting, and rightfully so, he was getting criticism for the lack of effort in game 4. It's just fitting that he did that, and he had a great game yesterday. But Jeff, what moment throughout yesterday's game, and I know it was a cardiac affair. It was cardiac Knicks, as we've been accustomed to for parts of the season. At what point did you have that aha moment where you were confident the Knicks were going to pull this one out?
It had to be, there's two moments that stick out in my mind, Alex. I definitely want to know what you think as well. But the RJ block on Jimmy was very symbolic for me. RJ and Jimmy, they go back, right? They have history. You saw that game, I forget whether it was earlier this year or last year, where Jimmy was kind of teaching RJ some game a little bit. He was kind of spitting to him a little bit and say, listen, use your body more, do this, do that. I think he saw a little bit of himself in RJ. and all of a sudden the student becomes the master, and RJ gets a big block on Jimmy. I'm sure Jimmy was a little bit surprised by that. And then the other moment that is a huge one for me is Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes, another partner in the 48 club with his backcourt mate, Jalen Brunson, gets a massive steal on Jimmy Butler after what seems to be like a pretty significant cramp that he got, where his or hyperextended knee, whatever it was, where his left or right leg was essentially stiff and he couldn't really move that well. But you see Jimmy try to pull off an in and out dribble, and he moves to his right side. Grimes anticipates it, gets the steal while he's somewhat injured. The crowd goes absolutely insane. That was a moment where I was like, okay, because you couldn't feel safe after the third quarter because, yeah, we got up to a 19-point lead, but we gave it back. And you started to have doubt creep in your mind in terms of these are the Heat. They're playoff tested. They're tough, and they know how to come back. But we showed a lot of grit and a lot of heart in that situation. I would say those two moments stick out to me in terms of kind of symbolic moments where I felt like, okay, I think we got this.
Yeah, for me, definitely. I mean, those are great highlight moments for young guys in the second round of the playoffs. Obviously, RJ, this is his second time around in a playoff, I guess, in the postseason, right? This is his second time in the postseason. Grimes is his first time. Both big moments in their careers, both against Jimmy Butler, too. Both good defensive plays against Jimmy Butler at that for a guy who's known for defense, right? Those are two great moments. The one for me is Mitchell Robinson knocking down free throws. As soon as you get Mitchell Robinson knocking down free throws, I'm like, this game, I'm like, there is nothing else you can tell me now. This team's in a groove. If Mitch is hitting free throws, especially when he hits back-to-back free throws, that's it. That's all I need to know. That's all I need to know. What were your takeaways from Miami, though? Because you see them, you talked about the 1-5 pick and roll. They're trying to get Mitch on the perimeter, get our rim protector away, so that way they have an open lane. But what else are you seeing that Miami has been doing, trying to throw off the Knicks?
You know, it's interesting. I know in doing these a lot game previews that you've had a chance to talk to a lot of Heat guys that are popular on Twitter. There was someone that posted something today that really interested me. His name is John Jablanca. I don't know, necessarily what affiliation he's with, but he talked a lot about the Heat offense, and for most of the regular season, it being kind of a mediocre offense. And the way that he talked about the offense was that their offensive efficiency is really predicated on getting their shooters open, running the opposing defense through a lot of screens, trying to get them to rotate, and essentially saying that Jimmy Butler is really the only player who can create off the dribble or get to the rim at an efficient and high level. So what it essentially comes down to is Jimmy being Jimmy Butler, which there's no reason to think that he wouldn't be. But more importantly, for the supplementary and supporting cast to hit open shots when they come off screens. So if they're not doing that, they're very beatable. And so, this guy, John, was kind of like, the Heat offense is somewhat mediocre, but when they hit their shots, they're very good. Not having Tyler Hero really hurts them a lot. But, he also talked about the Knicks. He still felt like it was a very winnable game. And if I was a Heat fan, I would feel that way too. If you come back from 19 and cut it to be pretty close.
Yeah.
But what I'm taking away from the Heat, if I'm the Heat, I'm in the locker room and I'm saying we just didn't hit shots. But I can't necessarily feel like that's a truly objective take because you didn't hit a lot of shots in the regular season. And if you are regressing to the mean, you're going to have to create a lot more off the dribble. And Mitchell Robinson is still a really good rim protector. I know he's not at the height that he was in the Cleveland series, but it's still going to be difficult to score over him. I have to think that Josh Hart is going to play better than he did in this game because I'm sure we'll get into that, but he was rough to say the least. But the only takeaway from the Heat is they did miss a lot of shots. If they're going to continue the form that they had in this series and the Bucks series, they will probably hit more. But we have confidence as the Knicks now. We won a game, and I think we did pretty well. And Jalen Brunson dropped, what was it, 38 points?
Yep.
I mean, you have to worry about guarding him. If Julius gets hot, I think there's a lot to be optimistic for if you're a Knicks fan right now.
There's absolutely a lot of stuff to be optimistic for as a Knicks fan, especially when you see the offense get back into the rhythm they've been throughout the regular season. Because with Quentin Grimes back in there, and we saw this in Game 4 where the spacing was better, and when you get Quentin Grimes to hit, he hit 3 of his shots yesterday. When you have Grimes who's able to knock down the 3, punish opponents with his quick first step and attack them, even though he smoked that layup. That's the type of stuff that when you get Grimes into that rhythm, for the starters, you start to see Brunson starting to hit his threes. You get Randall hitting his threes. You get RJ hitting his threes because he's creating that space, right? He's now causing the defense to collapse and then giving other opportunities. And then the opponent has to scramble. Or is Grimes going to pass to the center inside? Are they going to be open? And as we see with Miami, they don't want Mitch to get the easy putback or easy dunks at all. And they're willing to hack him and force him to shoot free throws. But if that's going to be the case, then Grimes can easily just pass it right back out. And if everyone's collapsing in, as we see for the Knicks, right? It is difficult to close out on guys on the perimeter if you're in the paint. It is too far of a distance to cover. So with that spacing for that, I guess it's helped the Knicks. I think for Miami though, and you talk about them missing their shots. Yeah, they didn't miss their shots. You hope that they're regressing to the mean. For me too, it's you watch Jimmy Butler and shout out to JD for mentioning, like, always talking about you don't over help on Jimmy Butler. You don't have to double team that much. And you saw what Grimes was able to do on one leg, as he noted on as the iconic call right now. The iconic call that's fluttering all of social media for JD's amazing call on the Quentin Grimes stop on Jimmy Butler. When you can just leave one person on Jimmy Butler, you don't have to help. It's going to force Miami to make some difficult decisions. Okay, are you going to be able to get around Grimes to get into the paint? Because that's what they've been successful with. If Jimmy can just easily walk in, which is what he did against Milwaukee, and get to his mid-range spots, it's going to open up all that perimeter shooting that you talk about. Plus, you're setting off ball screens and all of that nature. The Knicks really just need to focus on one person on Jimmy, in my opinion, and that's it. And also staying at the level, staying on the perimeter with those 3-point shooters, because that's their bread and butter right now. If you're going to force them to take difficult shots, please, but don't give them the air room, the space, so they can look at it, get easy looks. I mean, we saw that for Duncan Robinson. He started getting hot in the second half, and you're like, can we just you can't leave that guy open. I know he hasn't played in what feels like ages, right? After getting the big contract, but you still cannot leave him open because he can knock down the 3.
Honestly, Alex, what you said is 100% correct. And think about it this way, right? If you're a fan watching the game at home, Kevin Love, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus. The only one out of those guys that can kind of create off the dribble a little bit is Max Strus. Like, I saw him take Julius to the hole another night a little bit. He does a little bit of a better job of attacking closeouts. But what are they feasting off of? They're feasting off open shots, because when Jimmy has the ball and he's initiating offense, what do? We either double or we hedge. And Brunson will come up. He'll kind of show a little bit. He'll try and impede Jimmy's way of getting around the pick, and then he'll come back. And then now it causes everybody to rotate. So the Heat have found a very efficient rhythm with that rotation. Everyone knows exactly how to move when Jimmy is coming off a screen or whatever it is. But if we just have one person in front, and okay, if he gets around the screen, fine. We do have to deal with Jimmy cutting to the hole, but it's a lesser of two evils. Okay, maybe he gets a layup at the rim or a tough floater or whatever, but it's not an open 3 off rotation for Max Strus, Kevin Love, or Duncan Robinson. So at this point, I would rather take that. And if honestly, Tibbs really does need to see that. He needs to see the fact that when we disrupt the Heat's movement and their ability to create all of this movement off, us doubling somebody at the top of the key, it's going to create maybe a less efficient shot or whatever. But I think what you said is exactly the key there.
And once again, we're talking to KFTV's very own Jeffrey Campbell. He's our draft expert for the website, KnicksFanTV.com. Salute to Knicks Nation, to all the channel members and everyone in the chat right now. I see we even got some Heat fans in here. Salute to all you. We got 200 in the chat. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. And make sure to check out KnicksFanTV.com. All right, Jeff. Talked about game 5. Great feel good stuff. Now we got to talk about game 6. We got a little bit of momentum, as you noted earlier in this. What adjustments are you expecting for Tom Thibodeau in this game in particular? I mean, we got the 48 minutes, as you talked about. We may have to get that again. But what are you looking from Tom Thibodeau this time?
I think from a defensive standpoint, what we talked about a little bit, I really, really would like to see less of an emphasis of doubling or hedging on these screens when Jimmy has the ball. I think Quentin Grimes showed us a lot in game 5, and I want to give him more of a chance to either get over the screen or try and keep Jimmy in front of him before we commit to sending multiple guys at him. We don't need to do this for Gabe Vincent. And, I think that's the defensive adjustment that I want to see. And also Tibbs showed us in game 4 that he is really willing to go with a hot hand. I think that the fact that Josh Hart played as few minutes as he did in the game, granted he was in foul trouble, but we know the way that Tibbs loves and supports his vets. He leans on those guys a lot. But the fact that he was willing to go away from a guy that had such a massive impact on our regular season success shows you that, and even the fact that, Julius had sat for periods during this series and even during the Cavs series as well, shows you that I think he's ready to move towards whatever is giving us the best chance to win, which is super important. So I think defensively, if we don't focus solely on doubling at the point of attack and making our defense rotate relentlessly, which really tires our guys out, and the Heat are going to be home. So I always think that gives you a little bit of a shooting edge, shooting in your gym, a gym that you're accustomed to. So if we don't do that, and if we ride the hot hand, who knows? Listen, if Obi's in there and he's pushing the pace, give him minutes. Let him play out there for a little bit. If Josh Hart comes back and he's hitting his open threes and, he's rebounding, which is something that he's always going to do well, give him some more time. But don't stick to your rotations in a really rigid way that's going to kind of maybe hold back the potential from some of the other players really shining in this game.
I like those thoughts. And I think with Josh Hart being in foul trouble yesterday and forcing Tom Thibodeau to go in the direction of just trusting Quentin Grimes, hopefully he saw that game and said, you know what? Quentin Grimes is going to get a lot of minutes. If he's able to, once again, we go back to that one leg stop against Jimmy Butler. The determination, the grit, the tenacity. You see how he's fighting around screens. I mean, Kyle Lowry was having a hard time when Quentin Grimes was on him, and so was Jimmy Butler.
Right.
I think my thing for Tibbs is how much time is Grimes going to get in this series, because he hasn't gotten a lot of time since he's came back. And he came back in game 5 against the Cavaliers, but he got, I think, 10 minutes in game 1. He got a little bit more in game 2 because, he was like, okay, we need Grimes back out there. And you saw him close. But then game 3, game 4, Grimes was like, game 4, he was a starter again, but game 3, it was like, where's Grimes again? Like, why is he with the second unit? He's back. He's healthy. He should be playing. And now with this, I hope to see him more. But the question is, for me, for Tibbs, where do you go with, because RJ has been strong, man. And let's talk about RJ for a bit before we think about what the Heat are going to do to adjust. Like, this is a question. What RJ's been stellar so far this postseason. Stellar. What are you thinking if you're Tom Thibodeau? Because you mentioned it. You have Josh Hart, who we've gone to. We've seen RJ get benched in the fourth quarter, and that lineup of it was Brunson, IQ, Hart, Randall, and Mitch, or even Hartenstein if it wasn't Mitchell Robinson. What do you do now if you're Tom Thibodeau with RJ playing the way that he does? And if you're so fixated usually on playing Josh Hart in those closing minutes?
This is what I see with RJ. And, I've done post games for our website, and I've been critical of RJ. And I think most objective fans on some level should be critical of RJ in terms of his production this year. Yeah, you can say he's 22 years old, but this is his fourth year, and there's certain jumps and steps that we want him to make as a player on a professional level. But what I've seen with RJ is when he plays off the ball in the first quarter, if he hits a couple of shots, it has a drastic impact on his confidence to initiate offense after that. So if he hits shots off the ball and in the corner, then when you give him the ball and you ask him to play make, whether it's creating a shot for himself or someone else, he's much better at processing the game. So if there's a pass that's to be made, he's going to make it. If there's a driving lane that is there, he's going to take it. I actually think that running a little bit more of the offense through RJ is a smart idea given what he's shown us this year. Listen, if they want Jalen Brunson to play 48 minutes again, he's going to play 48 minutes again. You're not going to hear a peep out of me because that's just where we are in the series. But giving RJ a little bit more of responsibility in terms of playmaking abilities, he's earned that, in my opinion. I think that the fact that he's playing his best ball at this point in the year says a lot about the type of work that he's put into this. It says a lot about the type of character and the type of player that he is. So I'm fine with seeing the ball in his hands a little bit more, maybe even in crunch time, but especially early in the game. If he hits his shots early, he's the type of guy that can get things going.
Absolutely. I've just been impressed, man, because there's been a lot of chatter, obviously, about RJ from, no one likes to hear that he's only 22 years old, about the up and down season and all of that. And then he turns it around during the most important time of the year in the postseason. Hasn't had a bad game, honestly. Like outside of the first two against Cleveland, everyone had a bad game in game 3, but he has been very consistent. And the fact that he's been very consistent playing his brand of basketball and he really hasn't had to do anything different. Like you're not seeing new moves that are implemented. He is still getting downhill playmaking, doing what he's been doing for the last couple of years, and it's working for him. He is forcing the defense to say, stop me. That is how he's playing right now, which is very impressive that he's not only done this against the Cavs, but he's also doing this against Miami. And I'm with you. I'm fine with him getting more minutes. I'm at this point, I understand what Josh Hart means, and you're going as a coach, you want to balance out who's has the hot hand, who's feeling it that night. But the way RJ's been playing, it's hard to think about not having him or Grimes on the floor, especially if you're going to have Brunson and Randall out there. It is very tough to think that you can't continue with that starting rotation now to close out the game, right? So that's my feeling.
Especially if they're going to put Gabe Vincent on him, please. That's lunch meat all day. Punish him. Like that's not someone who can guard RJ, especially if he wants to get downhill. I'm sure they'll switch that up, but I really do. It's crazy to say this, but I have faith in him to make the right decision at this point.
You've shown it, man. So, but let's move to the other side, right? We know what we want to see from the Knicks. What do you believe Spoelstra is going to do at this point? Because they had the opportunity to close out Game 5 at Madison Square Garden, and they didn't. And it was it was a complete starting effort from everybody, right? With some good play from Obi in the second quarter, and you got some good bench minutes from Isaiah Hartenstein. What do you expect Spoelstra to do in order to try to become? What do you expect Spoelstra to do?
I would say two things. Jimmy Butler came out after the Game 5 loss, and he said, these are the playoffs. I think he was asked about Jalen Brunson playing 48 minutes, and he said, these are the playoffs. So whatever you need, if you need your best effort for 48 minutes, that's what you need. And he said, if Spo calls my number to play 48 minutes, I'll be suited and booted to do that. And he said, and we'll win. I think that was a not so subtle plea to his head coach to say, I will play 48 minutes if you need it. So that's number one. I expect that. And it's been a tired cliche, but it's very clear that Jalen Brunson is the head of the snake for the New York Knicks. I think the Heat will come out very aggressive defensively, whether that's doubling Jalen Brunson, hedging, showing, really being physical with him. What we've seen so far in this series, and I'm not a big blame the refs guy, but in the games that have been in Miami, there's been a very favorable whistle for the Heat. And I think they've been a very physical team all series. And I expect them on their home court to be very physical with Jalen Brunson. So I think they will try and trap. I think they will hedge. I think they will do whatever they can possibly to make other people beat them. Because I think that they recognize that when Jalen is going well, not only does he get his own buckets, but he inspires and builds confidence within his teammates. So those are the main two things that I expect them to do for Game 6.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head, Jeff. I expect them to be very aggressive trying to stop Brunson. I mean, he had 38 points. It was just he led the show, right? I mean, obviously RJ played phenomenal, Randall played phenomenal. You got big contributions from Mitch, as we talked, all around. Even though Grimes didn't really not like hit, he didn't have a double-digit points. Those 8 points were very critical in what the Knicks needed yesterday, just to create the spacing. I expect that to happen for Brunson. I expect them to try to stop him, double, triple, whatever it may be, to get him out of rhythm early, because that has worked to their favor. The question that I have the question I'm wondering that Spoelstra does now is that do you go back to fouling Mitchell Robinson like you did because he was able to knock down his free throws, or you go back to doing that because if you're thinking about the Knicks in that situation yesterday where they had Brunson and Grimes playing 48 minutes, when you foul somebody, you're giving them a breather. It's a mini timeout, even though it's not a timeout. So do you want to go to that strategy again, especially late in the game? That's something I'm wondering if they're going to go to again. Another thought is, how are you going to, we had Greg Sylvander, we had Brady Hawk on the show from 5 Reasons Sports, both of them, and they both noted how if the Heat are going to lose, let RJ try to beat him. Well, RJ is playing well. So how do you stop RJ at this point, right? Because they did a good job maintaining Randall, and that's the big question for the Knicks is like, will Randall continue the solid play that he had, because he's had an up and down postseason so far? But what are they going to do for RJ, because he is at this point doing what he wants to do, and how do you stop that? I know they have Jimmy Butler on him. Are you thinking about doubling him? That's my question, because if that's the case for the Knicks, then it goes back to passing, ball movement, all those other things, recognizing what the defense is throwing at you.
I think they're going to rely on the law of averages, and I think they're going to continue to not focus heavily on RJ Barrett. And if I was a coach, I might do the same thing too. I might say to myself, well, we have an 82 game sample size that says that, RJ is an inefficient shooter. He's an okay free throw shooter. He's not super efficient at getting to the rim. He hits threes at like whatever it is, a 33, 34% level. So if I'm the coach, I'm still ultimately worrying about Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, second chance points for Mitch. I think if you're cutting that 3 off, it's very difficult for the Knicks to score. So I don't expect them to be really keying in on RJ Barrett, but that's really a moment for RJ, right? Like RJ has to take that as a level of disrespect on some level, for the type of player that he believes he is. And he's got to say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to hit all the open shots that you give me. And then if I have open shots, I'm also going to attack closeouts, and I'm going to make the right pass, or I'm going to get to the rim and I'm going to score efficiently. He does that, and we have a really, really good chance of winning game 6 because, Jalen Brunson is going to get his points, even if you focus and key on him. I don't see any world possible that Jalen Brunson scores less than 25 points in game 6. Even if they absolutely throw the kitchen sink at him because of how good he is. Julius is a little bit more of a wild card. But, if you have RJ throwing in 20, 22, 24, also getting assists and boards, that puts us in a very good place to bring this back to game 7 in the Garden.
Absolutely. I think the other thing to think about for Miami is that now with Grimes back out there and creating the spacing, that's Max Strus who's on Grimes, right? Because you're going to have Bam on Mitch. You're going to have Kevin Love on Randall. Butler's guarding RJ. Vincent is on Brunson. It's Strus now. And you saw when Strus was guarding Josh Hart, he was able to hedge a little bit more towards the paint and protect that area. My question is for Spo now with the spacing and you see Quentin Grimes out there, what do you do? Because now you're opening up lanes, right? Now that lanes are opening up for RJ, Randall, Brunson, this is where you're like, what do we do to stop that? How do you wall off the paint again if you're going to have a shooter out there and if he's going to help contribute to everyone else getting in rhythm? That's something I'm wondering for Spoelstra on that side. But once again, what was that? No,
my bad. No, I was going to say, I think you got to play the lesser of two evils there. Grimes has hit threes, but I don't think he's hit them at a consistent enough clip. You're always going to guard him. You can't help off him. And it's interesting, right? We're talking about Grimes and Hart and the change in the starting lineup from a Knicks perspective. And I'm a Tibbs guy, Alex, but you do have to say on some level, you have to wonder about the decision to start Hart over him and what effect that may have had on the series earlier. Granted, we do win game 2, but, listen, you do have to wonder about it because it completely changes the spacing in the offense. And it's a headache for Spoelstra to deal with. I still think that ultimately they're not going to worry a lot about the outside shooting. I think that I honestly believe the things they're just going to focus on is keeping Brunson out of the paint, keeping him from, really going off, and then just boxing, whether it's putting 2 men on Mitchell Robinson, not letting him get second chance points. And they're going to kind of bet on us folding after that. They're going to say the Knicks are not a strong team enough mentally where if Brunson is not playing well and Mitch is not getting second chance points, they're not going to be able to overcome that. And I think that their game plan is going to be, we shore up that, we're going to win game 6. So I don't see them. I see them worrying about Quentin Grimes, but not to an extent that those other 2 things I mentioned get kind of oversighted.
I agree with that. And once again, we're talking to Jeff Campbell, KFTV's very own Jeff Campbell. He's our draft expert for KnicksFanTV.com. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for you boys. And salute to everyone in the chat right now. I see our channel members are in here. I see Son from Brooklyn, Robert Luis Santana. I see we still got some Heat fans in here. Some Heat fans really talking some trash with our Knicks Nation. I see some of that in here. I see some of that. Appreciate all you. But while you're over here, but you got to do, you got to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Because if you're talking in the chat, if you're enjoying all this, make sure to hit that thumbs up button because you're enjoying the content. All right, Jeff, one more question. We're going to wrap this thing up. What needs to happen for the Knicks to win tomorrow?
Listen, it's another Brunson 48, man. I know maybe that sounds crazy, but
for a second, my mind was thinking if you're thinking 48 points or if you're thinking 48 minutes. It might have to be both, though.
It's 48 minutes. I really do think that I don't know. This guy has a level of heart and will that we haven't seen on this team in a really long time, and I think it's really special. And I think he needs to be out on the court as much as possible, and that's my number one. And listen, you can't talk. We haven't really talked a lot about Julius Randle in this pod, but there's no question that a large part of whether we advance to game 7 or not is going to be on his shoulders. The first quarter Julius that we saw was selfish. He was not making the right decisions. He was taking his matchup with Jimmy personally. He was trying to dribble into the paint and bully guys and get calls. He was frustrated when the body-to-body contact wasn't going his way. But we need that third quarter Julius, somebody who's going to be patient, someone who's going to attack closeouts, make the right pass. He must have been responsible for at least 3 of the 4 threes that we hit in the third quarter, just off his driving and kicking out to the perimeter alone. So if we have that Julius Randle, I feel very confident, because that's a Randle that is in tune with what the offense needs, not necessarily. And I don't want to say like what he needs, because I don't believe he's a selfish person. I think he wants to win, and I think he cares about his teammates, but he does play selfishly, because there's moments where he believes that the best chance is me scoring here, but it also could be me kicking out when I've dribbled 3 or 4 times and I'm not backing my guy down into the paint. He's not moving. I'm not getting a call. Now the decision is kick it out, reset the offense unless you're super late in the shot clock. So Julius Randle is going to play a massive part in whether we win game 6 or not. And then, Josh Hart, of course, cannot have the same type of game that he had in game 5. We need way more from him. And, listen, the supplementary guys, of course, they have to play their role. Grimes hit at least 3 or 4 threes in that game. He's got to do the same thing. And he's not got to not smoke layups when he has a chance as well. Mitch has got to be the block nest monster. He's got to hold it down in the paint. He's got to be really strong defensively. And we need to create second chance points through his activity. But yeah, I mean, the monster share of the responsibility, of course, is going to fall on Brunson and Randle.
Those are all great points, Jeff. And definitely the Randle portion is the one that has to be highlighted, because when you look at the way how he played in game 5, right? You just saw what he did. In the second quarter, he just changed his focus to getting to the cup, drawing the contact, getting to the free throw line, taking shots in rhythm, just being part of like a natural flowing offense, driving downhill in the third quarter and finding guys out on the perimeter. That's the Randle that we need. If we get that Randle, things are going in a good direction, because then he becomes that guy that you have to double team. Like, they're going to naturally double team him. But if he starts scoring and then you have to really focus on Julius Randle, that's when you start to get those opportunities for Brunson to get into a 3-point rhythm. Same thing with RJ. That's definitely numero uno for that, because as we saw throughout the series, we've seen RJ have good games. We've seen Brunson have good games, but it's not enough. You need Randle, and of course the bench, right? You'd hope the bench can come through. I mean, without Quickly, he's doubtful for tomorrow's game, as we got, thankfully, on that, no Quentin Grimes on that injury report after what was a scare. So he's going to be good for tomorrow, but it's going to come down to the bench for Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Obi, what they can do in their minutes, because look, Miami had 40 points yesterday to the Knicks 8. I think they have 41 yesterday to the Knicks 8 points. And that's just not going to cut it. So we need more from the bench. And look, if Brunson's going to be playing another 48, I'd expect Grimes to be up there as well, just because of the defense that he had. But I think you hit the nail on the head on what you have to see from New York. But Knicks Nation, thank you for tuning in for another game of the week preview for game 6, where the Knicks are back down in Miami. You can find it over on ESPN. They're going to be playing at 7:30 tomorrow. They'll be back down at South Beach, taking on the Miami Heat, trying to push this to a game 7. But thank you all for tuning in. Jeff, if you got anything coming up, please let the listeners know where they can find you. If you got anything coming out soon.
Everything on KnicksFanTV.com. I'm sure there'll be some draft pieces. I'm sure there'll be anything related to what happens after this series, good or bad. But always writing for KnicksFanTV.com for sure.
Okay. Okay. And thank you, Jeff, once again. And we got a super chat before we exit out here from Zay B with the $5 super chat. Appreciate you. Says Heat's defensive strategy: frustrate Randall and pull offensive fouls. Foul Mitch on offensive rebounds to prevent second chance points. Make JB play defense. Yeah, I mean that's what they've been doing throughout this entire series. I agree with you 100%, Zay B. Definitely Miami's going to keep trying to do that because it's worked to their favor. But thank you all again, Knicks Nation. But remember, don't only just tune into KnicksFanTV.com. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit that thumbs up button for your boys, okay? And if you want to join the rest of the orange and blue faithful, as New York is down in Miami, you know where you can do that? You can do that at the 4040 Club, Jay-Z's 4040 Club. So if you want to go hang out with all the other Knicks fans, you know what you got to do? You got to go off to KFTVplayoffs.com. Go get your tickets over there. So make sure to go get your tickets. Go get there an hour before tip-off. Go get some drinks, you know. CP likes to do it up, man. CP will be there. He'll be hanging out in the mosh pit as well with the orange and blue. So make sure to go get your tickets over at KFTVplayoffs.com and hang out over at Jay-Z's 4040 Club. All right, Jeff. Appreciate you for coming through. All right, Knicks Nation. We'll catch you later and salute. Oh, before I get out there, salute to all the channel members. Salute to Knicks Nation. Salute to all the mods. All right, everyone. We out of here.